In order to follow up on the previous video where I talked about the Hebrew verbal system, in particular the concepts of the Hebrew verbal system, it's my intent in this particular video to now introduce the call perfect and to remind the student that this is the most basic form of the verb, the call perfect, the imperfect, etc. Once you learn the call perfect, imperfect, imperative, and so forth, you'll be able to extrapolate that to the other stems that we will discuss. So what I want to do first is just provide something of a quick overview as to what we actually have in terms of the system itself. And so you can see here that what we're looking at primarily is the chart that I've provided. On the top we have the stems, and these are listed as call, nifal, pl, pual, hifil, hofal, and hitpael. So these are our stems, and here are the four categories: the root, the stem, the state, person, gender, and number. So the first category would be to find the root of the verb. The second would be to understand what stem this is in. Also remember that these are active or passive depending upon how they are vocalized, both with proformatives, affirmatives, and vowel inflection internally. Then the following, of course, was the state. And here we have the indication of those as the perfect, imperfect, imperative, participle, and infinitive. And so this chart gives us a great visual to understand how this is all put together. You have the root, then you have the stems, then you have the state, or as we sometimes call it, tense, and I indicated that is entirely appropriate, but just redefine that somewhat so that you understand that in reality we're not talking about past, present, or future. At this point we're talking about action, complete, incomplete, imperative, command, etc. And then the last category, what we saw was number 4 down here, is in fact the person, gender, and number. This is going to be, for example, third person masculine singular, third person feminine singular, second person feminine singular, second person masculine singular. And this is going to go all the way through the conjugation chart, and it gives us the way that the word is inflected to help us understand which person, in fact, and number then are speaking. To move forward with this, now we will actually do an analysis of the call perfect paradigm. And these are called variously paradigms or conjugations. You'll see it listed as either one. Notice that what I have here are the conjugation or the paradigm laid out from third person masculine all the way to first person common plural. Now this is perhaps a little different than what you've seen on some other more modern linguistic charts, where they'll typically do the first person first. In this case, though, in normal ways, the Hebrew paradigm begins with the third masculine singular, and the reason for that is because, as you can see here, this is the most basic form, and off of this form you will build all of the other forms with the proformatives, affirmatives, the vowel changes, etc. So let's think a little bit more specifically about this first one, and to remember, this is shamar. Shamar is our basic word meaning to keep, or as we will say typically when we're doing the paradigms, he kept as the third masculine singular. So what we're going to do is change this in conjugation form from a third masculine singular to a third feminine singular. This is not as hard as you think. We do this in English with the change of pronouns. Typically, there are some word changes as well, such as is, or he is, you are, that kind of thing. But typically, we will use a pronoun to change the person, number, and gender. And all that happens with the Hebrew is we're going to use a syllable sound at the end of a word that inflects that change for us. So in this case, here we have our basic root, the 3 letters. You remember we talked extensively about 1, 2, and 3, the base letters. And this is a regular form. All we're going to do is we're going to add a syllable on the end, and that's going to be the ah sound. So when we see shamara, we see the ah on the end following the resh, we know that that's going to be the third feminine and singular. And to actually point that, we're going to look at it as Shah Marah, this Kamates is actually going to be more under here. So that gives us our vocal inflection with the addition of what we would call an I-formative, which is an ending to this particular verb form. I'm going to do that one more time. Sha, mara. And I'll put this a little more in the right place this time. Sha with the metheg. This metheg indicates a slight pause. And notice that that's what I have listed right here. A slight pause. Sha, mara. This serves a couple of purposes. One is it allows you to have a stop, just a very, very slight but yet distinct stop. The second is that we now know that this Shiva is a vocalized Shiva. So we have this in terms of pronunciation as Sha Mara. Let's continue on so that you can get the greater sense of it. Notice that we have the ah here. The next ending or sound that we're going to add onto the word is ta. Following through, we have the simple t sound, and I'll explain that in a moment. We have the e sound, the t in this case, with the tav, the hirik, and the yod. We have the u sound. We have the m sound, the n sound, and the nu sound. So all of these endings, and we call those I-formatives, are going to be added onto this verbal root, and that will give us, in fact, the conjugational forms. So to follow this through a little more carefully, we're going to add the ta sound, and that's going to give us the second masculine singular. When you do that, that is also going to have some impact on how the remainder of the word, in our case I'm kind of working backwards, is going to be vocalized. So in this case what we have is shamar ta. Shamar ta. Notice that in this form we do not say sha marta, sha marata. It doesn't work, obviously. We say shamarta. And we will continue on. The next one is we put a T sound on the end, just a T sound, and if we add all of these in, what that's going to give us is shamart, not shamarti, but shamart. It's just going to be a simple T sound on the end. The following one, if we do shamarti, that's going to give us the first person. Working backwards, that's also going to provide for us a way to understand shamarta. And this is principles that work off of the way that syllables are formed in the Hebrew. And then just to continue on without me writing every one of them out for you, you'll notice that we put the u on the end of this, the tim on the end of this, the tin on the end of this one, and the nu on the end of this one. Importantly, when you see the final mem, that's typically an indication of a masculine, and usually a masculine plural. And the noon is going to be a feminine plural. And the nu is going to be a first person common plural. That's the ending that we typically find on that particular verb form. Let me read through these. I'll do so a little bit slower the first time through, and then I'll come back. I'll repeat them. Following that, I'll give you a chance to repeat them after me. Shamar, shamara, shamarta, shamart, shamarti, shamaru. Notice the method. Shamartim, shamartin, shamarnu. I'll repeat that again. Shamar, shamara, shamarta, shamart, shamarti, shamaru, shamartim, shamartin, shamarnu. Slower this time so that you may repeat the word after me. Shamar, shamara, shamarta, shamart, shamarti, Shamaru, Shamartim, Shamartin, Shamarnu. Shamar, Shamara, Shamarta, Shamart, Shamarti, Shamaru, Shamartim, Shamartin, Shamarnu. Well, this will give you the verb form that we know is the call perfect. Do want to reiterate, probably the most important thing about the verbal system is to actually nail down this call perfect and the call imperfect when we will address that in the next video. You need to be able to just repeat it by rote: shamar, shamara, shamarta, shamart, shamarti, shamaru, shamartim, shamartin, shamarnu. You need to be able to repeat that over and over. Once you get that down, you'll be able to extrapolate that to all of the other verb forms. So I think the most important thing for you to do at this point is memorize this particular verb form. Good luck with it, and I look forward to seeing you in the next video.